Hello, I'm Brian Fox. Welcome to I Hate Rock Music, and as promised, a video on the band Three Man Army, which is one of my personal favorites. I think the level of quality work that you get with Three Army is really the kind of stuff you look for when you're a collector. First you get into Black Sabbath and Led Zeppelin, and then you go to the next tier of bands like Sir Lord Baltimore and Bang and Budgie, and the more of that kind of stuff you discover, the more you keep digging, hoping to find a band that is equal to those. And Three Man Army is definitely up there. I think they're one of the great um, power trios of the 70s. And so the Gun basically turned into Three Man Army. And so what ended up happening is after Gun broke up, Adrian Gurvitz in 1970, 71 started working on a solo record. And that's one of the reasons why we have multiple drummers on that album. Mike Kelly from Spooky Tooth is the main drummer, but Buddy Miles plays on the first track, Butter Queen, and then plays bass and organ on a couple other songs on the album. And then Carmen Appice plays on it as well, although I don't know which song or songs. So, but during the making the record, of course, Paul Gurvitz is back with the band, and it's power trio stuff. And so they released their decided to call it Three Man Army and released their first album in 1971, both in the UK on Pegasus and in the US on Buddha or Kama Sutra. And so this was the point where Buddha Kama Sutra was looking to change their image from all the bubblegum bands they used to have. So they signed bands like Dust, and Three Man Army is one of those bands that got swept up with that. But the first album is really great. A lot of incredible guitar overdubs, great drumming. Lou Reisner produced it, so it sounds really good. Their tunes are really cool. Adrian Gurvitz has got a very distinct voice, good singer, and he's a phenomenal guitar player. In fact, at one point in the UK, he was rated as one of the top 10 guitar players in the UK, and he really is that good. Um, as a matter of fact, he ended up touring with Buddy Miles for a while, and so I think 2 years. And so Third of a Lifetime came out in 1971, did respectfully, and then they released the second album called Three Man Army in the United States, and Mahisha with a different cover in the UK and in Europe. So recorded in 1972 and released in 1973. That was back in the days where, as I mentioned, you just had to come across records. You couldn't look it up on the internet or find out much information or even know it was out there. And I picked up Third of a Lifetime in cutouts and knew it was going to be really good with a name like Three Man Army and the machine gun on the cover. But Three Man Army, the first album on Reprise, I had no idea it was out there. I'm just looking through a used record store in about 1977, and I came across it and was completely amazed that there was another Three Man Army record. And it turned out the same way. I had no idea Three Man Army 2 was out there, and I finally came across it and was blown away in 1974. So those three albums came out in their lifetime from 1971 to 1974. And by that time, of course, they had chosen Tony Newman to be their drummer. So, but when they signed a Reprise in Polydor in Europe, Three Man Army included Tony Newman, who's a drummer's drummer and is on a lot of amazing records, including May Blitz, previous to Three Man Army. So Tony Newman definitely liked the power trios, and he really upped the game for Three Man Army on those second and third album. Three Man Army it's got a lot of variety within the context, but once again, really layered, orchestrated guitars, overdubs, just like Paul Gurvitz, Adrian Gurvitz did in Gun as well. So he really likes that technique, and he uses a lot, and he does it really well. So Three Man Army, same thing. It's got a lot of wonderful tunes on it, very memorable songs, great singing, insanely great rhythm section, and then Adrian Gurvitz's guitar work is all over the place. and in some places it rivals the work of Black Sabbath, or reminds me of that anyway. And Tony Newman's drums are just impeccable. And there was a third album that they worked on. It was going to be some sort of opera, I guess, but it never came out. And finally, I think about 10 years ago, Three Man Army 3 came out. So that's one of the things that gets confusing about Three Man Army. Their third album is actually called Three Man Army 2 because they decided to focus in on just the two Reprise slash Polydor records as their history. Um, and Third of a Lifetime, as far as Adrian Gurvitz is concerned, was more of a solo record. But anyway, it's kind of confusing when you look at their. And then, of course, their fourth album is now out as Three Man Army 3. And it's got a number of things on it that are very reminiscent of the material they were working on in 70, 72 and 74. But there's definitely some more pop-oriented material on that record. And so it's a mixed bag, but it's really great to have after all these years. You kind of wonder what they would have done had they moved forward. And Three Man Army 2 is really the mother lode. The opening tune, Polecat Woman, is very Led Zeppelin-ish and just killer all the way around. Very frenetic, incredible guitar work, and there's just incredible guitar work all over the record, and a beautiful cover as well. And so, but they carry that same weird split personality that Adrian Gurvitz had with Gunn, where even with Three Man Army, there's these occasional bombastic, syrupy ballads, and they work a little better with Three Man Army because they're a lot more dramatic, and a lot of times it's a full rock band with an orchestra and lots of backups. But particularly on Three Man Army 2, there's a couple of songs on there that are just huge productions with all kinds of orchestration. But some of the lyrics are a little insipid, like, dead bird floating by the sea. A little corny, but I'm very forgiving on lyrics a lot of times. I definitely love bands that have great lyrics, but I cut a lot of slack for bands that maybe don't have the best lyrics. And Three Man Army, the lyrics serve the purpose, and they're so intelligent in every other way that I let the some of the silly lyrics slide. But of course, after that, Three Man Army sort of continued. Tony Newman left to join David Bowie's band, and they brought in Ginger Baker, and so it could have easily just been Three Man Army 4 or 5, but Ginger Baker had such status. Of course, they wanted to play that up in the band name. If it had been another Three Man Army record, it probably would have gotten ignored. But having it be the Baker Gurvitz Army definitely promises a lot more attention than the band ever got before. And I think another reason Three Man Army probably didn't catch on is Reprise in the U.S. certainly didn't know how to promote them. They went on a 9-city tour in 1973 and into 74, and they opened for the Beach Boys. And so not the best crowd for Three Man Army, that's for sure. And they ended up, their last date in the U.S. in 74 was with the Doobie Brothers. So putting a band like Three Man Army opening for the Doobie Brothers, the Beach Boys, and one show, I think, with Grateful Dead and New Riders of the Purple Sage is just not a good combination. And I know there's a lot of wacky concert lineups back then. I remember seeing Blue Oyster Cult open for Sly and the Family Stone in 1973, so that was a little wacky. But obviously, they didn't win over any new fans, I think, opening for the Beach Boys, so that's unfortunate. And I only heard some couple songs from the Three Man Army album from 1973 on the radio, and other than that, I never really heard any Three Man Army on the radio, and I listened to a lot of FM stations that played a lot of underground bands, and I heard Trapeze and even Sir Lord Baltimore on the radio, Bang and stuff like that, but I never heard any Three Man Army on the radio, so they kind of under the radar there. And it's also kind of surprising, they did a lot of shows in Europe, but it's kind of surprising we don't have any live recordings three-man army. It's surprising they didn't do one of the famous BBC concerts, or just get recorded, because Adrian Gurvitz was such a respected guitar player in England. So it's really unfortunate. I really would love to hear a live performance by Three Man Army, just stripped down to a single guitar, and focusing in on the hard rock material. And I have to imagine they're really fucking loud too. But the live three-man army experience would really be something. I'll keep my fingers crossed that someday a live show will pop up, even though it's 50 years later. We still continue to get surprises, so that would be awesome. Um, so there you have it, three-man army. I know a lot of people watch my videos, have heard of them, but if you haven't heard three-man army and you like that early 70s hard rock proto metal, then this is going to be one of the biggest treats you've ever heard. I'm Brian Fox. Thanks for watching I Hate Rock Music.